Kia ora, and welcome to another episode of The Leadership Lounge. I'm Katie, I'm your host. Great to have you back for another episode. The Leadership Lounge is a space for healthcare leaders to take a moment, take a breath, get a fresh perspective, encouragement, ideas, inspiration, all of that stuff that is so important as you continue working in the healthcare setting, because it's not easy. And so this week, I promised last week, building on that, the overview that we did of the 7 habits of highly effective people and how the difference it had made for me, how I think there's so many relevant things for the healthcare leader for us to build on. I promised that we were going to dive into the habit of this idea of how we prioritize things. This is a really common challenge in healthcare because everything seems to fit into the urgent and important bucket. You know, the stuff that we're not doing, the stuff that we've already decided is no good, we've already got rid of. You know, we're pretty good at pulling out these things. And when we have this big driver around patients and patient care, it can be really hard to pull back. Okay, I'm saying that really tentatively because even saying it feels kind of like a little bit uncomfortable. So what I do in this episode is give you that overview of that habit in particular and the quadrant model that he describes, and some examples from how they can show up for us as healthcare leaders and workers, but also to give you an example of something that happened just the other day where I did lean into that space of being effective in terms of wasn't urgent, but it was important. How hard it was for me to turn away from the urgent things into the non-urgent things, and the difference it made for me. Not kind of a work, but a very personal story. So that's what we're going to do. And it also links to a topic that I think is really important for us to keep revisiting, and that's this idea of the Healthy Mind Platter. So I'm going to wrap all of that in together. Sounds like I have a plan. I have notes. Let's see what happens, because you know what it's like. It's me just chatting with you. I'm Katie, I'm your host, and I've been working in healthcare for over 30 years, and I'm on a mission to help us all change the way that it feels to work in healthcare, because when we feel supported and connected and involved and encouraged and appreciated, then we can make the changes that the healthcare system needs. No big magical fixes coming from on high, but what we can do is make a difference where we are. And if we're all doing that, then the healthcare system will evolve, and it will evolve into what we need it to be. And I believe that working in healthcare can be both joyful, delightful, marvellous, and challenging and demanding, but we've got the support systems and can support each other to enable that to happen. All right, there's my little mission statement. All right, so habit 3, 7 habits of highly effective people. So if you don't know the book, you need to either listen to the episode from the other day or Google that, to be fair. And we're looking at habit 3, which is putting first things first. And it's about having decided what success is, you need to know what am I going to be doing? What is the things that are important, and what is the stuff that I need to say no to? Now, we're not good at no in healthcare. Not good at no. We're really good at just adding more and more in. And when are we going to say stopping stuff? So, not easy to do. We're going to try and walk through a 4x4 quadrant model, which is looking at the 2 axes of urgent, not urgent, and important, not important. So we'll start off in the not important, not urgent. We would hope that this is easy to get rid of, but it's also an easy trap to fall into. So he describes this category. Oh, I need a drink of water at this point. Oh, where's my pause button gone? Love it when I find the pause button. Okay, so quadrant 4, which is not urgent, not important. He calls this waste. So he lists this as trivial work, avoidance activities, excessive relaxation, time wasters, and gossip. So now I am, big confession here, I'm a bit of an Instagram scroller, and that's my excessive relaxation. Brené Brown would call it numbing. So it's really important that this does not say that rest is not important. I am not one. I'm all for the well-being and the looking after ourselves and the knowing when we rest and not trying to do everything all at 100% speed all the time. But this idea of waste and this numbing idea is when we notice that it's now becoming, it's not actually relaxing, it's actually excessive, and it's actually not useful and not helpful. So waste is quite important, but I think another important thing to pull out in the waste box, if you like, is this idea of gossip. That how we talk about each other really is destructive on so many levels. So let's just think about that one. Okay, I won't go off on that little, statements. Okay, so we'll now move into he calls quadrant 3. So if you're imagining this box, this is now, oh my lordy, I don't know left and right. This is the trouble. Okay, so we're now in the not important, but urgent. Now, this is a really interesting one because this will be, he's got the list there and you will all know this. Okay, as I read out this list of stuff, you'll go, yep, that's all the stuff that I have to deal with. So it's needless interruptions, unnecessary reports, irrelevant meetings, other people's minor issues, unimportant emails, tasks, phone calls. It's that sort of stuff. It's the unimportant stuff. So distraction, big one. Often hear it when I'm working with teams and when I'm coaching people one-on-one, this idea of the number of times that you are interrupted, having to deal with other people's issues. It's urgent for them, so it becomes urgent for you sort of stuff. And this idea, particularly of meetings, of we could talk forever on meetings. This was a. You can see why I've avoided talking about this topic because there's so much in it, right? So this is what he classifies into the distraction space. Now, there's a whole heap on that. It's like the courage part comes into this, because if you're being invited to irrelevant meetings, sometimes it takes courage to go, I'm not coming to that because of X, Y, Z. But this is also about how we build our communication skills and our relationships, setting expectations so that we're reducing those things. So it might be, and I am seriously making this conversation up as we go along at this point, it might be about kind of going, how much of my time is actually distraction? The next one we talk about is this quadrant 1, which is, I still can't do. Okay, so this is the urgent and important. I really should have labelled the diagram I'm looking at left and right. I can't decide if it's the way I'm looking at it. I don't know. I'm overthinking the left-right business. Just draw this out. Okay, so we've got urgent, important. I'll put a picture in. That's what I'll do. You can all look at the picture. It's fine. Urgent and important. So this is the crisis. This is the emergency stuff, the last-minute deadlines, the pressing problems. Now, from a clinical setting, these are when the patient has collapsed. These are when we have got to turn this around now, because the building's going to fall down or the flood. What I think a lot of the challenge is that we are not good at really defining what urgent is. Everything becomes urgent. I need this report by tomorrow. Do you? Do you really? What's going to happen if it doesn't? I think what gets tied up into this conversation is our understanding of risk. And the other challenge in this area is because we all have these different ideas of what success is. And if you think about the layers of hierarchy and what is important through all those layers, is that something that is super important to someone higher up the food chain, if you like, is going to be demanding someone much lower down that hierarchy system to do something really urgent, which is not urgent for them because they're actually dealing with a staff member or a team of people who are really distressed because something really awful's happened on the ward. So you get this crush of, I've got all these urgent things that I'm supposed to be doing. So it's the urgent to who, and how do we have those conversations? So it's not saying there's not a right or wrong in this, over there wrong or they're right. It's just that there's a level, there's a bandwidth that as human beings we're able to manage. And if we're not conscious of urgent for different people and what that looks like, then that's why we're leading into this burnout space. That makes sense? I hope so. So we're always going to have to deal with these crises, but we've made everything a crisis. Maybe that's the sum up of what I'm trying to say. We've made everything urgent. We've made everything a crisis, whereas actually it's going to take real courage for us to go, what's not urgent here? Because if we can get out of the not urgent, we can start to become more effective. So quadrant 2, important but not urgent. Now this is where, according to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and if we're looking at anyone that's talking about this, making an impact, being effective, being a good leader in terms of that strategic, moving things forward, this is where we need to focus our time and energy. This effectiveness space. So this is proactive work, important goals, creative thinking, planning and prevention, relationship building, flashing lights on that one, right? Learning and renewal and recreation. So I love that learning and renewal and recreation's involved that. When I went through in episode last week where we talked through the sort of the buckets that I put things into as a new charge nurse, which is where I first came across the 7 habits of highly effective people. The bucket that I didn't talk about was my own development bucket, and I think that's an important one. And so learning and renewal, that's in there. That is important work to be doing, not urgent, but important. Let's read that list again. Proactive work, important goals, creative thinking, planning and prevention, relationship building, learning and renewal, recreation. Now, it's a hard sort of shift if you're starting and you want to move more into this space, because actually it makes sense, right? Because if you did some planning and prevention work, you end up with less crisis and less emergency stuff. Particularly if you think about the relationship building, then all of a sudden we haven't got these pressing problems because we've got the relationships that we need to be able to do some stuff, and we're spending our time in the proactive work, so we're doing less reactive. But when a system is constantly pulling you into the urgent space, it's really hard. And I think one of the other challenges that we have in healthcare is that we all jump into the urgent spaces. And it's an exciting place to be, right? That's where all the buzz is and that's where the fun is. And if you've come from a clinical setting, you really love that. I know that sounds awful, but I really loved looking after a sick patient because there was so much going on and so much to think about. So those crisis moments, they give you a bit of a buzz. Not denying any of that stuff, but if we are all in that space, then we ain't going to get the stuff moved forward. We don't need 20 layers of people, exaggeration, I am prone to it, involved in how we're going to move the beds around for today, how we're going to move the staff around for today. We don't need it. Let people do the jobs that they need to do so that we're all worrying about the right level of urgency for what our roles are. Anyway, that's clearly something I care a lot about. Everyone being involved in this urgent crisis, because it's stuff we can do, and sometimes the creative thinking, the planning and prevention, the relationship building, the learning and renewing might either be harder, might not necessarily be something we're really good at. We might not really have clarity over what that looks like. It's just easier to stay in the crisis mode. You've got to get honest with ourselves around, are we sitting in this urgent emergency meetings, last minute deadlines because we actually enjoy it? In which case, okay, maybe consider whereabouts you are best placed for that level of enjoyment. Or do we want to sit more in this proactive space? So lots of challenging reflections to make on a personal point of view around this space of effectiveness. So this is where we should be working more of. And it doesn't mean to say that we ignore the crisis, right? It also doesn't mean to say we ignore the distractions. It's about working out that we're going to spend most of our time in the non-urgent but important work. So yeah, your first job is to kind of do a bit of an understanding of what exactly of your work fits into those 4 buckets that you're doing, getting really honest with yourself, getting honest with yourself about where you spend, how much time you're spending in each of those 4 quadrants. Again, really cool downloads, and there's quite a lot on this sort of framework out there in the internet, and I'll pop some links to some really good ones into the show notes. But my example that I wanted to give, how hard this is to put into practice. I'm sitting there, due to go away on holiday. Then I'm due to move to the other side of the world. And there's kind of like a long list of stuff. There's a lot of stuff I have to do. And it's kind of feeling quite urgent. I've got a whole load of follow-up emails to write. I've got some email responses I've got to give. I've got to get some invoices in. I've got to get some stuff sorted for this. There's a lot to do. And it's kind of, I've given myself the deadline, so it's a bit self-imposed. But there's this deadline coming up because going on holiday and then moving to the other side of the world. So there's lots of deadline stuff. And I had a day put aside that we were going to go off and do something nice for the day that felt important, going to visit a place that was really important to us. And so the day before, I was hoping I was going to get all this work done, and I didn't, because my energy had just gone. I couldn't do it. Did some other things, so suddenly the time I thought I had to do everything had just disappeared, and I didn't get through all the work that I hoped to get through. And so on the Friday, where we were going to go off for the day, enjoy ourselves, take some time out, some rest, that recreation space, I thought, oh no, I need to stay home. I need to get this work done. And this sense of crisis and last minute and all these pressing problems that I needed to solve, it's really the pull just going, let's not do it. Let's do this. It's more important that I clear the decks. You all know that feeling, right? I know you do. Clear the decks, get this work done, get things crossed off my to-do list. And often when I'm talking with people about this kind of scenario, I'll often say and remind people that the work is never done. The to-do list is never clear. And I kind of had that voice talking very quietly in the back of my head. The other voice talking back in my head was the fact that, is this important and how urgent is it? And you can feel the tension in there that I kind of thought, no, I really need to do the urgent stuff, but actually I need to go into this not urgent space because I know it's going to have a benefit beyond the getting the to-do list done, right? It's going to be bigger than that. And so off we went. We went round to my favourite beach, New Zealand, in Hawaii, in the Coromandel, and it's the beach we got married on. We've been visiting Hawaii for 17 years, and it is very special. And we had an absolutely amazing day. And I found myself, we got thrown in the swimming stuff. I know it's May, and I know it's practically winter, or the end of May, and I threw the swimming stuff in anyway, thought just in case. I love a swim in the sea. And it was one of those it was one of those 4 seasons in one day days, and there was rain, there was wind, there was clouds, there was sun. We had it all, and we stopped at a few places en route, and I was just leaving it into the lap of everything around things, and we got to the beach, and Adam turned and looked at me and goes, "You're going to swim in, aren't you?" And I have never got changed so quickly and into the water so quickly. And I found myself laughing and jumping at the waves and getting splashed and just playing in the sea. There was no one else in the water. Adam did come in, and then we were both playing in the sea and body surfing on the waves and, just having a real laugh and a bit of a cry as well, to be honest, but really playing. And I came back so delighted, so energized, and so lifted up from that experience of that day. And I could then tackle the work that needs to be done with so much more enthusiasm, energy, clarity, all of this stuff, because I had taken this time out. It was really important that we got back to this beach before we left the country. It wasn't urgent. The world wasn't going to end if I didn't do it, but it was important. And that focusing on this non-urgent but important thing gave me so much more than trying to struggle away at all those tasks that I did. The link with the Healthy Mind Platter, and I love it because none of these tools sit in isolation, right? You can't just go, this is the only thing I'm going to pay attention to, and that's going to sort anything. There's such an amazing myriad of amazing tools and resources, and it's about, yes, knitting them together in some shape or form, but using the bits that really work. But it's also about noticing how they come into play. And so at the end of the day, I reflected. I thought, I did something that was important. It wasn't urgent today, and that's made a really big difference for me. And then I was reflecting, and actually I was giggling and laughing, and I was playing. Now, play comes into the Healthy Mind Platter. Now, the Healthy Mind Platter is a tool that's come from neuroscience, Dan Siegel and David Rock. Phenomenal tool that really helps you take, on a high level, takes a stock take of these are the things that we need on our platter, if you like, for mental well-being. So we know from a general, what's the word I'm after, consensus around what it takes to have a healthy eating platter, what you should be eating generally for health. I know there's a whole lot of diets and variations, but generally, there's some ideas out there. And so this takes it into the space of, okay, what do I need from a mental well-being? And again, it lists seven items. Now, that I thought that was quite interesting. I'm thinking, maybe I've got a thing about 7. Who knows? Who knows where the idea of all these 7s come from? So we've got 7 things on there. We've got sleep. So I think we know refreshing mind and body, consolidating memory, really important that we have sleep. Physical time, so moving and exercising our bodies, that is supports our mental well-being. Focus time, so this is where we focus single attention without distractions, goal orientated. Another one is time in, when we're focusing on the present moments. This is that sort of meditative journaling reflection space. Then we have downtime. That's that mind wandering, disconnecting, no particular focus or goals, but just that amblingness. And then we have connecting time. And this is about being with others, ideally in person, safe, secure, all of that sort of stuff. But we can be with others because we don't do this alone. One of those phrases I use quite a lot. And then playtime. And this is that being spontaneous or creative, enjoying fun or novel experiences, not to tick off a goal or a task list. And one of the ways you can use the Healthy Mind Platter, and when I run workshops, which handily, no, it really was. Hold on, I need to just flick and find the dates now. So I'm running a couple of free, I've done this in the past, free webinars. Well, they're not really webinars because they're workshops or they're Zoom meetings. They're not really that. Zoom meeting, come to a Zoom meeting with me, open invite, free to attend, couple of sessions in June, the 11th of June, 10 a.m, the 18th of June at 12:30. And we'll be introducing you to the Healthy Mind Platter, running through those things. And the way I really enjoy using it is that we just take a bit of a stock take. We go, okay, yeah, how am I feeling about my sleep right now? Am I getting enough? Not getting enough? How about my focus time? Am I spending all time in that or not? And this is never about getting to 10 out of 10 on all of them. This is about just noticing and going, okay, all right. So I'm doing quite a lot of connecting at the moment. That's great, but I'm not getting a lot of downtime. Okay. Does anything need to shift? What's working? What could I change? So it is a useful thing from a neuroscience point of view and understanding the things that our minds need, but also a reflective time to understanding where you're at with certain things and celebrating what's working, and then leaning into, does anything need a shift or two? And whenever I score this, whenever I do a bit of a score and notice myself, the thing of playtime is always my lowest. I really struggle with that idea of play. Who knows why? Let's not get into that deep analysis of why playtime is hard for me. So the added delight of noticing the fun and the frivolity I was having and playing in the sea in the winter time was, well, just great, to be quite honest. And so knowing this is, this is playtime for me, just having that clarity that that's what I enjoy, and noticing it and leaning into it and reflecting on it and celebrating that we did it. So the reinforcingness of these habits here, so we've got the 7 habits here, and this was one about prioritizing and how we do the stuff that is going to help us be effective, and then morphing it with this idea of what is it that is needed for us to be well from a mind perspective, and then realizing that I'd managed to pull these two things together. I thought, well, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool, particularly as I knew I had the Healthy Mind Platter web workshopy things being planned. I was trying to lean into the different things to enable me to be as most effective as I can. And it was just a nice example of not too much thinking, a bit of courage to just notice, but the difference it made. Because the energy, the enthusiasm, the clarity, I've still got lots to do, and I'm going to get there because of that, in that better mind space from taking that time out to do that. Okay. There we go. Your summary of habit number 3, putting first things first. I'd really encourage you to have a look at that in a little bit more detail. Have a look at the quadrant model and get your clarity on where you're spending your time and what could change. Great conversations to have with a team. Great conversation to have with your boss around stuff. but this ability to build your habits of personal effectiveness, you've really got to be able to understand those things and have the courage to do that. And then the Healthy Mind Platter, how this syncs so neatly with this idea of recreation, but what we need to stay well from a mental well-being perspective, and how those two things can work together to support each other as we are all trying our best every single day to get through all the stuff that life is throwing at us. All right, lovely. I'll pop all the links as usual into the show notes. I'll pop the link to register for the Healthy Mind Platter webinars. Be delighted to meet some of you on those, and great to chat through the different things that you find either hard to lean into or the things that you're winning at, because we can then share all these ideas with each others and build off what is working for other people and go and try them for ourselves. It's a great opportunity to meet other people in the healthcare leadership space, but also to learn from each other and to share those ideas. That's why I love running these workshops, to be quite honest. You take care. Have a great week. You're doing a marvellous job. Fantastic job, I would say. And I will be back next week for another episode of The Leadership Lounge. You take care.